Pamela Topjan. I live in the Northern California in the US, and I am a former nurse, a certified hypnotherapist, and a pet sitter, which I love so much. And I wrote my memoir. I didn't come this far to only come this far because I've had a life of trauma, and I have learned only about that in my 50s, that the whole childhood of trauma has led up to a total mental break when I went to therapy. And only in my 50s, after therapy, did I realize how much of that childhood led up to where I came to that
Yeah,
big mental break.
that's
And then,
interesting already.
yeah.
We get
And
caught up in like, you said it like so many times just in like that short bio of like, only in my 50s, but it's like we forget that like, that can happen anytime. Like I hate
yeah.
seeing that in the news, like, can you, like with Salma, I'm way off track, but we'll cut that out. But Salma Hayek was like she posted some video, like picture the other day. I think it was like her birthday, maybe that's why she did it. But they're like, can you believe that? Like, look at her, she's 56. I'm like, she's 56. Like, she's not 96, which still is fine, but why
Right,
are we doing
right.
this to people, Or I
Yeah.
get, I even did it to myself in the beginning. Like, I'm 42 and why am I doing this? I'm 42. But we so easily get caught up in like the age of things. And it's like,
Yeah.
life happens when it happens.
Right. And I do believe that everything happens in the right timing that it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And so, learning about what everything happened to me, learning about it in my 50s, I feel like I couldn't have been the person I am today without all of
Yeah.
that before me.
Yeah.
And being a hypnotherapist, I couldn't have been as good of a hypnotherapist or had the empathy that I have and to be as passionate for what I do for my clients if I hadn't been through all that myself.
Yeah.
Because the people that I feel benefit the most from what I do are the people like me that were, stuck or had tried everything already or had, um, had trauma in their past and just don't know where to go
Yeah.
anymore, don't know what to do anymore. So, so I know that I'm better for having been through all of that.
All that. So then
Yeah.
where does your story begin?
Well, my story begins in when I was 9 years old and my parents divorced. And all my friends were telling me, oh, good, you're going to have two homes and you're going to have two Christmases, yay, yay, yay. And good for you. And no,
No, I was gonna say, hold on, wait a minute, this
no.
is a sad situation. This isn't fun party time. This is
So my dad was a deadbeat dad before that was even a term. So back in the 70s, we never saw him. He didn't help my mother with any kind of, he never took us for weekends or even an evening or a day or whatever. He never paid her anything. And I had two sisters. So she was with three daughters off on her own in the 70s. And she didn't have a college education herself. So she had to really work hard at a few different
yeah,
jobs. So what ends up is we're neglected. We don't have enough food. We barely have, clothes to wear. We move a lot. We're evicted a lot. I end up being a teen mother. Before all of that, my oldest sister was killed in a car accident,
hmm.
and it was only at that time that my dad kind of started coming around. But it wasn't until me and my other sister started having children that he started coming around.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where that starts.
And that's all within. I mean, so you mentioned like divorce at 9, and then go to when your older sister passed away. Unfortunately, like what time frame are we talking here?
So she passed away just before I turned 14.
Yeah, so I
So
mean,
about five
all the
years of
yeah,
us moving from apartment to apartment, my mom trying to just keep food on the table, which she
yeah,
didn't really do a good job of. And I'm not blaming her for that. It was the 70s.
yeah,
It's hard for women to make a wage
sure,
to
yeah,
support a family, which she ended up having to do at that point. But so just really being, going through neglect. And because of some of the places that we lived in, I had a couple date rapes in my early teens. I was sexually assaulted by older, like young men. I was unsupervised, no guidance, just kind of off on my own in the streets. I'm sure that my sisters were supposed to kind of watch me and they never did.
But
So I was
yeah,
really alone. Yeah.
yeah. And all during, like, I mean, the most like transformative part of your
Right.
years. I mean, it certainly continues on, obviously, but I mean, that's like
Right.
the most crucial point.
Right. The times that I could have used a mother and
Yeah,
a father for that matter, um, I didn't have any of that.
yeah.
So I had two abusive marriages, and of course I did. When you look back, it's like, what did I know of healthy
What was right?
relationships,
Yeah,
and what did I know about standing up for myself or anything? So, going back to that, as far as standing up for myself or even knowing that what I felt mattered. Um, so when my sister was killed in the car accident, we were in the hospital, and my mother's friend was with us because she drove my mother. Nobody was going to let her go alone. And so that woman says to me, she puts her finger in my face and she says, "Don't you cry. Don't you cry. You have to be strong for your mother." And this is 1980. And it's a couple days before I'm 14. And
it's like, wait a
which
minute.
is so damaging.
Yeah,
Even
I
now, I have
mean,
a hard time crying. So,
yeah. I
yeah.
was gonna say, I mean, it's. I mean, I wouldn't say like bad advice. I mean, it's certainly like probably well intentioned, but you
Yeah.
know, like watch your audience as well, right? I mean,
Right. Right.
you don't even know what that emotion is, let alone how to deal with it, right?
Right. Right. And that's probably for me one of my biggest things if I went back to therapy now would be I need to understand my emotions. I need to be able to express my emotions. I
Yeah,
don't have any of that still. And I have been through therapy after my second divorce. So we're kind of jumping around a bit, but
no, it's
but
okay.
yeah. So the emotions were all messed up from there. But before that time of that woman saying that to me, there was nobody around. So I never told anybody anything anyway because I didn't want to upset my mother.
Sure.
And she was so tired when she was home. I already knew that she was very stressed and depressed. I commend her for hanging in there because I'm sure that she, was probably suicidal, but just hanging on because of her
Yeah,
daughters. Um, so I never knew that
yeah,
what I was feeling mattered anyway or anybody would care. And then this woman says that to me. And then I go on to have two, abusive marriages.
yeah.
So,
It
yeah,
makes you stop and like kind of rewind in your own head years later and go like, were they connected? Is there something that could have been said, supported,
right,
thought of differently? Hindsight, of course, but it does make you want to try and put the puzzles together a little bit differently.
right. And when I had went to therapy, that's when I first realized, and it was a huge sort of epiphany for me that, oh yeah, that the whole childhood led up to these toxic marriages. I didn't even connect those dots until therapy.
Yeah,
And that's when I started writing the book too. And it was more for my own therapy. It
yeah,
wasn't necessarily to be published. And just by writing it all out and going to therapy, I could really see, you had it down there written out, what
yeah,
this led to this, led to this, and led to this. And then it makes more sense. And then you're empowered to feel like you have more control over things and you get to
yeah.
know yourself better and why you are the way you are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as you start to process those in your own, basically your own terms,
Mm-hmm.
with the support of therapy, but what
Yeah.
starts to transpire that you weren't necessarily ready for or weren't necessarily expecting to come out?
Well, just the feeling so empowered and getting to know myself. I never would have thought I'd be living the life I am today. I never would have thought that I could be in a healthy relationship, that I could love my life and love myself. I never even had any idea of how this would feel or that this was even possible.
Possible.
And so that was just amazing for me. And I did, yeah, so that's the biggest sort of takeaway. And when I went to therapy, I was suicidal myself at that time, and that big epiphany was sort of like, oh, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be able to live. It was
Yeah.
just like a big relief, like, oh, now I can see the healing happening
Yeah.
finally, and I didn't know it was possible. And it was kind of a last ditch effort kind of a thing.
Yeah. And how do you, I
So,
mean, how do you get to that point? I mean, I know you have people all the time like talk about being, in abusive relationships or,
mhm.
having an abusive past, from family members or, parents altogether.
Yeah.
How did you start to connect the pieces there that not having like a firm definition or a firm, foundation to stand on of what a meaningful, healthy relationship is? How do
Mhm.
you get to that point of saying, no, I don't know what it is, but this one twice is not right. Like, how does that eventually
Well,
fit
with the
together?
second one, I had to call the police after being physically, abused to the point of being unconscious. And so that was the first one was abusive, but not, it was more demeaning and, emotional and verbal abuse. And then the second one was even worse. It was abusive in every way. And so after that time where I had to call the police to get out, of course, then divorced. And then I was living alone. And again, it was kind of this like, oh, yay, everything's going to be good now.
I'm gonna have two
And
houses. I'm gonna have, two Christmases all over again.
right, right. It was just really the expectation of, phew, now I'm on my own, and
Yeah.
now everything will be great.
Yeah.
And that's when I really got into a deep dark hole, and it was just the CPTSD, creeping up on me now that I
Yeah.
didn't have to be so busy taking care of everything, and I just kind of was able to exhale and just kind of relax. And then the nightmares came and
Everything says hello.
yeah, everything says
Yeah.
hello. Exactly. Exactly. So I got to that place where I was suicidal, very anxious, very fearful all the time, nightmares, night terrors, barely able to take care of myself. And a friend says to me, so I had this friend that we were both going through very similar situations, just
Hmm.
got out of really nasty divorces, really anxious, really depressed. And a friend said to him, why don't you come stay with me for a little while? Maybe a big move will be the thing that helps you to restart and get out
Yeah.
of this funk that you're in. And so that was in Missouri, and I'm in California now. And so that person was going to go to California and do that. And they were like, I don't know if I'm going to, but maybe that might be something you want to do, just start fresh somewhere
Start
else.
fresh.
And so I contact my landlord and I say, just a heads up, I might be breaking the lease. I'm thinking about moving out of state. And they said to me, oh, good. We were going to sell the house anyway. Can you be out in 2 weeks? So I said, well,
Well, I
I'll
guess my decision
try.
is made.
Right. And it was the best decision I ever made
Yeah.
because it was the first year was rough in California, but I got on that bus, 3-day ride with a one-way ticket, sold
Um,
just about everything I own, last ditch effort. I was already, making plans for suicide actually at that point. And so I didn't really care. I was really numb on that bus ride and I didn't care. It was like, well, if it doesn't work out, I gave it another try.
Yeah.
And so when I came to California is when I finally got some therapy. But like I said, the first year was pretty rough. I was kind of bouncing around in different kind of caretaker
Yeah.
jobs because I am a nurse. But when I moved to California, I didn't know that I was going to stay there. I didn't know that I wanted to continue nursing. So I didn't get my license switched over to the state.
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't do that work at that point in my life anyway.
Yeah.
So I was
That
just
takes a
taking sort of,
whole other level of like
oh man.
shared compassion. My wife is a oncology nurse
Oh
navigator,
yeah. Yeah.
and like a deep level of like, nursing. But
Oof.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, on any level, right? I mean, you're having to put a lot of energy of your own
Yeah.
if you're doing it, for the right reasons. You're putting your own
Right.
heart on the line.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew that I could not do that, at least for a little while, if I wanted to even do it again.
Yeah.
So I start taking these caretaker jobs because in California, it's different than a lot of other places that there are a lot of these live-in sort of caretaker jobs. So I did a few of those before I kind of, found my way. But I was able to get therapy while I was doing that.
Hmm.
And so I know we're bouncing around, but I already talked about that little therapy story.
That's okay.
So,
That's okay. It's the
so
beauty of
I,
editing, really. I mean, that's what I said. I mean, I want that. I mean, the conversation. I mean, look, I'm rambling on about things that anyway, but yeah, I mean, that's what happens, right? When you're
yeah,
talking, like, there is no coherent, like, and then people can feel that too, right? If I'm
yeah.
constantly asking a question to you, it's like, no,
Yeah. So I didn't know, yeah, cause then it reminds me of something else. So yeah. So I had went to therapy. I'm in California, and that's when I started writing the book. And as I said, it was more for me. It was kind of in case I didn't make it, in case the suicidal thoughts won out, and then there would be sort of a record of what happened from
happened.
my own perspective, the whole life story kind of a thing. And one interesting thing about that I didn't realize until I was on another podcast um, for fatherless daughters. And my dad is Armenian, so I'm half Armenian and half German. And I always wish I kind of knew the Armenian side.
Right.
And, my grandmother spoke Armenian and my dad never spoke it. And I know that he had some strange things in his childhood because his parents were from Armenia. And we always were going to have some conversation at some point, and we
Yeah.
never got to because he died early. And so I know that part of why I wrote my story was because I don't want my kids to someday say,
Yeah.
what happened? What
Yeah.
was going on with mom?
Yeah.
And I think it would be really, really cool. Like right now, if I had my grandma, my great grandma, great aunt's sort of
Yeah.
memoir of even just what life was like for that person in my family
Yeah.
generations ago. I thought that would be a really great thing to have. And so that's part of why I wrote that too.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean,
Yeah.
stories have a way of connecting. It's not just for a healing, and not just for hearing it for entertainment. I mean, there's value in there.
Oh yeah.
I'm right there with you. I mean, that's probably what sticks me to keeping a journal.
Yeah.
In fact, I gave one to my wife for Christmas.
Oh
It's
nice.
one at Christmas, and I put that on the inside jacket, almost like word for word what you said, that our kids deserve to hear our story, and we're open books anyway to them.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
wouldn't have been a problem. But that way, it's like, oh, there's another side of mom and dad that I didn't
Right.
know, or just never came up. It's not like you're hiding it, but that way
Right.
there's something. No, I'm right there with you for sure.
Right. And the interesting thing is, too, the age that you're at right now, when your kids are your age, they're going to think, you know, look how young mom and dad were. And we thought they were these really older,
Yeah,
grown-ups. And,
yeah,
they don't realize that we're growing up with them.
with
We're
them.
learning as we go when we're
Yeah,
parenting, right? So
absolutely.
that kind of stuff is really, really neat to see.
Yeah, that's great to see. Absolutely. So then,
Yeah.
as you travel along here, how do you get into the work you do now? How did that come up as?
Yeah. So eventually I started nursing again in California, excuse me. And it just is not, it's not working out. It's not very well. There's just so much business, and you probably know this. There's too much business and not enough caring for the
Yeah.
patients. Everybody's overworked, everybody's overstressed.
Yeah.
It's not safe. And so I had taken hypnotherapy. I had taken a holistic healthcare course in 2010 in the middle of, my second marriage. Um, just trying to find something a little more holistic and natural than what
Yeah.
I was doing at that time as well. And it was kind of a dream that feels like it kind of died, it was kind of lost there because it wasn't able to continue on. So then when I came to California and I was nursing for a while, and I was still feeling this, feeling this way again. It was horrific for me. I didn't want to keep doing it. And I did this sort of guided meditation as to what, like, for your life purpose.
Yeah.
And I saw myself doing hypnotherapy. And I was like, oh, it's coming back to me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, thank you, universe, And so then I just started looking into it. I had no idea how I was going to
Yeah.
transition from nursing to hypnotherapy, but I thought I need to look into it. And I actually had this kind of deja vu moment as I was looking into it. And I went to the school to get information. And and so it just all worked out where I was able to transition into it. And then it was 2020, and our classes went from in person to online. So I started
Yeah.
taking people online during the pandemic, and was able to transition out of nursing into hypnotherapy. And it's been amazing. And being that I do this online or on the phone, then I'm able to do the pet sitting as well.
As well.
Yeah, so I had a friend that was a pet sitter, and she had an injury, and she had asked me if I could pick up some of them for her since she knew I was kind of working from home. And this is after 2020. This is after the
Yeah.
lockdown. So business was starting to pick up for her, but she couldn't do it. And I had done a lot of work with animals and done some pet sitting myself, before that even, just out of the love for animals.
Yeah.
And so then I started picking up for her, and I got my own clients, and I just was so busy doing it, and I loved it so much that I just kept it up, and it
Get
just
that.
keeps growing. I turn people away all the time for it,
Do you
but I
find
love
that
it.
both of those things between, pet sitting and, being a hypnotherapist, obviously it's what you do to make a living, but do you find that they're kind of intertwined with your own like support and healing? I mean, the pet
it's
part of it
it's
is obvious to anybody who owns a pet, that like, of course, but
of course, right. Right, and I get the
it's
best
still
of.
your pet, like, so it's like a little bit different approach to it.
Well, I'm like the grandma, I get to like love on it, and and just take care of it, and
At the
give
end
it
of the day,
extra
you go
cuddles,
home.
and then I go home. Yeah. And I'm getting paid for it, so I
Yeah.
love it so much, and I don't have their vet bills, or their food bills or anything. So it's really great. And it feeds my soul to,
Yeah.
not only the pet, it's pet therapy, right?
Right.
I mean, everybody who has a pet or cares for pets, it's pet therapy, right? But for doing the hypnotherapy as well, and seeing these people come out of these places that I was in, and coming out of it,
Yeah.
or whatever their issue is, and seeing these transitions in life, every time I
Yeah.
give a session, I get probably as much out of it as they're
Sure.
getting out of it, and
I
I just
believe it. Yeah.
love it so much.
Yeah.
So I feel so good about it compared to with nursing. I never went home feeling so good about it.
Yeah.
I never came home feeling like I did everything that I could have done because I didn't have the time or the resources, you know, and so
Yeah.
much was out of my control.
Yeah. Well,
So
thank you
yeah.
for sharing your story here.
Yeah.